Hey guys, today we'll be looking into how to implement navigation into your React Native app. Alright, so first thing we'll need is the app itself. So I'll just go through this guide really quickly. So we can just copy this command and I'll just go ahead and name my app Food Delivery App. Once that's done, let's cd into it. Let's cd into iOS and say pod install. Alright, when that's done, we can just go back and say npm run iOS. So for me this failed, and what I'm going to do is just close this and say npm install, and then go to iOS and say pod install. Once that's done, go back and say npm run iOS. Let's rename the file to tsx. Now we can just go ahead and remove all of this and say view text restaurants app. And let's say we have a very simple menu, which is in view. Let's say text profile restaurants, and let's say explore. Let's add a style to it. Let's say styles content. And now let's create those screens. Let's create a restaurant component, which will be just a card with a restaurant. Let's populate our explorers page with restaurants. Let's say in profile we'll just have and a button, and in the restaurants we'll just have a list of restaurants. So now if we want to look at the explore screen, we can just clean this up here and say return explore screen. And of course we have to import React. Here is the explore screen. Let's add some styles to it. Let's also add a title for each page. Of course you would put this into a global variable because you're repeating it all the time, but for the purpose of this tutorial we'll just keep it simple. So in order to see this profile screen, let's say profile screen, and we have an error here. Let's see, it of course has to be in text. Here's the profile screen. Let's add some styles to it. And then same for the restaurants. Let's copy the container. Now in order to see our restaurant screen, just do this, and now we see the restaurant screen. So how do we navigate between those? So to make basic navigation work, just transition from one screen to another, we'll need stack. And what stack is a component that basically maintains a history of navigation and allows you to transition between screens. So let's say we create a very simple component which is called menu. Touchable opacity, which we'll need from React Native. text explore, then say restaurants, and profile. Let's remove these unnecessary things that we copied. So now on press of this button, go to explore. That's what we have to do with all of those links. Let's also rename this component to menu. And in restaurants, let's import that. Now we have a menu here. Let's add some style to links. Let's say also it's navigation here. So of course, don't mind the design of this app. The most important for us to understand is how to create navigation here. Now what we want to do is when you click on explore, restaurants or profile, it goes to that screen. So let's head down to React Navigation. Let's scroll down and we have to install this. Of course, do save because we need to have this in our package.json. Now we need to install the peer dependencies. Now we can go to the iOS folder and say pod install. So for Android, what we have to do is in our main activity class. So you would have to go to main activity and just put this here. And also import this library here. Now we have to go into the app, delete this, and wrap the app in the navigation container. Next thing we have to do is install this stack. So we can just continue here and copy this command. Go to our root directory and say npm install native stack, save. Once that's done, let's go to iOS and say pod install. And then let's relaunch the app. So now what we have to do is to define the screens of the app. So we have to import create stack navigator from native stack. And let's create our first stack. So let's say root stack. You can call it whatever you want. And now what we have to do, instead of showing this, we have to say root stack navigator. And let's define screens. Let's say screen, name explore, component explore screen. And let's do the same for restaurants and profile. All right, if we want our initial screen to be something else, we can just say initial route name. And let's say that we want profile to appear first. We can say that and just reload. And now our initial screen is profile. But for us, we can just say explore. By default, it will just grab the first one that it finds. If we replace restaurants with explore and reload that, you see that we have restaurant screen. But let's revert that. We just need explore here. I like to define this explicitly so there would be no confusion. So now if we go to our explore screen here and add a menu, we can see that our menu doesn't do anything yet. So let's fix that. Let's go to menu. So now in order to fix that, we have to import navigation from the screen. So only screens have this navigation prop. So if we would want to use this navigation prop, we would just have to do navigation and then in the component itself use that navigation. But instead of doing that, we can just use the hook that comes with the library, and we can just say navigation, use navigation, and then here we can just say navigation, navigate restaurants. Let's remove this. Now if we click on restaurants, we can go into restaurants page and see the restaurants page. If we go back here to explore, we're back at explore. So this is basically how stack navigation works. Let's do this for explore and profile. Now we can click around. Let's reload. Profile screen, restaurants, and explore will not work because we are already in this screen. Now, if we would want to still go to the explore screen from the explore screen, let's say we have a user profile screen, and this user profile can have other user profiles like in Instagram. Whenever you have a follower, you can go into his profile, and then from his profile you can go into his follower, and it's all nested. So what we could do is say push. Let's reload that, and if we go to explore, it will infinitely stack and push the navigation of that screen. We'll see how to use that with restaurants. So in order to fix this TypeScript error, what we have to do is define the types. So if we go back to the app, and here we can just say export type root stack params and say explore restaurants and profile, and then here we can just use this type, and then you have to go to menu, and here we can just say stack navigation prop, and then pass in here our root stack params. Now we have the navigation type. If we say explores, it will throw an error because there is no such screen here. Now if we go to restaurants, each restaurant here should be a link to its own screen. So let's make a screen called restaurant. Let's make a very simple page. So now this screen has to take in a name or ID or something which would identify the screen and show information about this particular restaurant. So let's go back to the app.tsx and define that there is also a restaurant screen. Say restaurant, say restaurant screen, and now it will throw an error because there is no restaurant in type. And in restaurant, what we have to do is pass in the name of this restaurant. Let's say name string. In the real world, it would be an ID or something like that, so you could fetch the real restaurant's information based on your server data, but for this example we can just say name here. So now if we go to the restaurant page itself, we have to define a type which will accept the name and will be a navigation prop. So what we can say is type props equals native stack screen props, and here we just say root stack params, and then we define which of these screens is the restaurant. So we can just say restaurant, and now here we can just say React FC props, and now inside here we can say name and then use this name in our text. So now let's go to restaurants and let's define that this restaurant card is a button which has an on press prop. Let's say on press a function, let's say touchable opacity. And let's say it executes onPress function when onPress occurs. So now in the restaurants, what we can do is say onPress, and let's say navigation. And in the restaurant screen itself, we can use navigation as a prop because it's a screen. So we can just say navigation, navigate, restaurant. And here we can also specify a type. Native stack screen props, root params, restaurants. And since it's a type, we'll just say props. And here in the restaurants card, we also have to pass the name to the onPress in order to know which name was passed. So let's say name string. And now here we'll receive the name. And here we can just pass in our params, which will be the name, as we can see here. So we can just say name, name, or just name. So now if we repeat that for all of them, and of course before we proceed here, what we have to do is go to the app and see restaurant screen here. It has to return a view. Let's remove this and move it right here. So now it will say that we don't have a name here, but we have two objects here, navigation and route. So what we'll need is route. And in the route, we have key, name, params, and path. So we need params. And we'll see that we have our name here. Let's select that. Now, whenever we click on the sushi restaurant, for example, we'll see that it's a sushi restaurant. If we go back and click on the burger restaurant, we see that it's a burger restaurant, and so on. Now, if we go to sushi restaurant and let's say there will be related restaurants. Let's say there will be text related restaurants, restaurant card. Let's say name sushi 1. Sushi 2 and sushi 3. And on press of each of those, we can grab the second parameter, navigation, and say navigation, navigate restaurant with the name of sushi 1. And you could do the onPress function in the component itself. It really depends on your use case. But in case you want to be in control of what happens whenever the card is pressed in your parent component, you can just do onPress. So let's say sushi 2 and sushi 3. Now we have a sushi restaurant with related restaurants. If we click on sushi 2, it will change the title to sushi 2 and sushi 3. But this is not real navigation because we can go back. In Instagram, for example, whenever you click on a user, you can go back to that user and check all of your history. So in order to do this here, we can say instead of navigation, we can say push. Now, if we click on sushi and then click on sushi 1, we can see that we have pushed a new screen on the stack. If we go to sushi 2 and then sushi 3, our history is still preserved because if we go to restaurant back, we can see that it's sushi 1, sushi 2, and sushi 3. So this way you can nest the same screens inside of Stack Navigator. So Stack is really the basis of all navigation. Now let's say instead of this ugly navigation here, we want a nice bottom navigation on the bottom of the screen. In order to do that, we have to install the bottom navigation. So let's just say npm install bottom tabs. Let's say save. Let's go to cd iOS and say pod install. Now let's relaunch the app. Now we can go back to the app and just say create bottom tab navigator. So now if we go to the app, we'll see restaurants, profile, which we can click on and transition between screens very easily. Now if we click on restaurant, it will give us an error because there is no params name. So we have to do something differently here. If we remove restaurants and go to the restaurant screen and click on the restaurant, it will fail again because the screen is not registered. So in order to solve this, we have to nest navigators. We have to create a different stack navigator for the restaurants page itself. So whenever you go to the restaurants, this stack has to have a history of all restaurants that you go to, and you have to be able to go back. So the history of the restaurant screen will be separate, but this stack will be connected to the app using the create bottom tab navigator. Let's try to do that. So first things first, we have to also add this type here. And now we have to create a different stack. Let's say restaurants stack. And let's say create stack navigator. And now this stack navigator will have a different type. Restaurants stack params. So this will have two screens. It will have the restaurant screen and then a single restaurant screen. So we can just say restaurants and restaurant. Now let's just copy this. Now we can set this type here. So we have to create a new component saying restaurant screen. And let's configure this navigator. Let's say restaurants stack. And let's say restaurant stack dot screen. First name will be restaurants. And the component will be the same as here, restaurant screen. And then there will be a restaurant, a single restaurant screen. So let's say restaurant screen. So we also have to say navigator here. And let's say that initial route name for this will be restaurants. Also, let's fix this navigator. And let's also rename this to restaurant stack. And let's rename restaurants right here to be this. Now, whenever we reload the app and go to restaurants and go to a restaurant, go back, you see that the state of this stack is maintained. So sushi 3, if we go to back to explore and go back to restaurant stack, our sushi 3 remains the same. This is because restaurant screen has its own history. Now let's go back at what we did here. So there's root stack params, which has all the screens, and then the restaurant stack has the restaurant stack params, which has restaurants and then a single restaurant. We renamed the stack to be different in order to not be mixing restaurant screen with the restaurant stack. So now you can see how this all plays in together. Our stack is the main component, but create bottom navigator ties everything together. So in the same way as restaurants, let's say explore also has a history of restaurants that you can go to. So we can copy this stack navigator. And instead of saying restaurants, let's say explore. Let's create explore stack params. Let's say explore and restaurant. And then here we can just say restaurant screen. And we have to rename this to explore stack params. And now let's use this in the root stack. So let's say explore screen. Let's rename this. Now we have the explore screen, and also it came up with a warning that there is a duplicate name for the route. So let's fix that and let's say explore stack. And now in the root stack params, we also have to say explore stack. We also have to fix one thing in the explore screen. As you see, it doesn't have the onPress method. So what we can do is reuse the same logic as we had in the, and also we have to say this. And in the explore screen, what we can say is type props, import this, and let's say explore stack. Now in the props, we have to get navigation. And same like in restaurants, we can just do on press navigate to a sushi restaurant. Now if we go back to the app and click on sushi, sushi 2, we can go to restaurant stack, click on burger, and click on sushi 3. And now in the explore stack, it's sushi 2, and in the restaurant stack, it's sushi 3, all with different histories. So now you see how those stack navigators came into working with each other. Now if we want to go from explore stack to some restaurant in a restaurant stack, we can go to explore, and here, for example, just as a test, say navigation, navigate, restaurant stack, here say screen, restaurant, and here say params hello from explore. Now if we go to restaurants near you and there's a sushi restaurant, we click on that, and we can see that we are now in the restaurant stack, which says hello from explore. If we go back, we are in the restaurant screen because this is the parent screen. So in order to fix this TypeScript error here, what we have to do is go to the app and say navigator screen params and pass in our restaurant stack params. What we also have to do is, according to the documentation, we have to set all the screens that don't have any params to them to undefined. So we can leave this as is, because if we would put in undefined here, this would mean that this object would be optional. But for restaurant, what we have is name, which is required everywhere. So we have to leave it like this. Same for restaurants. Same for explore. Now if we go back to the explore screen, we will not see this error anymore. And if we type in something else, we'll see that there's an error because there is no such screen defined in TypeScript. And we can check that it works. Yes, we're redirected to the restaurant stack hello from explore. Now let's say we want to style the tab bar icons. We can do that right here. So first what we'll need is just a couple of icons. Let's create a new folder icons. Say explore icon, profile icon, and the restaurant icon. Now you can just go ahead and copy this from my GitHub, which I'll have in the description. So now what we need is this library here, so let's just go ahead and install it. And by the way, you have noticed that there is an error right here. So to fix this error, it's just not finding children or not treating children as if they're a JSX object. So what we can do to fix this is say npm install types React Native save dev. Now if we go back to this code here, you'll see that now we have no error. What we have here is also saying that we don't have explore screen, which is true. We have explore stack, so let's just fix this here. Now let's go back to the profile icons. Go ahead and copy this in. Also to explore. We'll need this. Now if we go back to app, we can also remove this type here. So we have those three menu items here. So let's start with Explore stack. We have to pass in options. And in options we have to say tab bar icon. Gets color and size of an icon. And then say explore icon. Then pass in this color and size. Now for the label, what we have to do is say tab bar label and then say explore, in order not to show explore stack but show explore. Now you'll see this error. This means that we just have to go and do pod install. Now just restart the app. So now, as you can see, it works. We have the label and the icon. Now you might be wondering where this color and size comes from in the icon. And this comes from the screen option. So what we can say is screen options tab bar active tint color E67A15. And as you see, it changes the tint color and is then passed to our component. We can also say tab bar inactive tint color and define the inactive color of the icons. What we can also do is hide the header, so we can say header shown false. Now it's gone here. And we can also hide this header because we're kind of handling it our own way. So we can just say here screen options header shown false, and we can do the same for the rest of the screens. Now we can see that the header is gone everywhere. Let's also add icons to the rest of the screens here. Say a restaurant icon and profile icon. There we go. We have the explore icon here. Oh, and sorry, we also have to change restaurants, just the label. Now we have it, explore restaurants and profile with each of their icons. So now if we'll go to any restaurants, we'll see a problem here. We cannot go back because we have removed the header with their default back functionality. So what we have to do is go to the restaurant screen and add this button right here. Let's create a component for that because that might be repeatable. So let's say top back navigation. Let's say top back navigation. Right away, let's grab navigation because we'll need this for the go back functionality. Say view, let's create a button. We'll also need a back icon, so let's create that. Copy this from my GitHub. Let's use it here. Now what we have to do here is just say on press. Navigation, go back. So if we go to the restaurant screen, we have to add this here. So let's say top back navigation. An error, we just have to import React here. Now one more thing we have to do here is underlay color. Let's go to a restaurant and then go to a nested restaurant. No matter how much we go, we can always go back to a previous item. So that's it for the tab bar. Now we can look at the drawer navigation. And that's going to be extremely simple. All we have to do is just copy all of this. Let's just save this for reference and just say app tab navigator. Update the imports. We can just remove this. And let's duplicate. Let's call this app drawer navigator. Now we have to install the drawer component. Let's open up a terminal and say npm install React navigation drawer. Now we'll need pod install. Restart the app. We'll need to modify index.ts here and say app drawer navigator. Let's also go ahead and remove this navigation because we don't need this anymore. Just say menu and also an explorer. So in our app drawer navigator, we have to find this create bottom tab navigator and just replace it with the drawer navigator. Let's say create drawer navigator. Now we'll see some errors, and that's because it's called differently. So in drawer, it's called a drawer icon and drawer label. Let's repeat that. Let's save. And now we can see that the tab navigator is gone, but now we have to open drawer navigator. In order to do this, we need another navigation component which will be called top drawer navigation. It's going to be very similar to the back navigator, so let's just copy this, and instead of back icon, let's import a new icon. Let's say in icons drawer menu icon. Copy this from my GitHub. Let's go back, and here let's say drawer menu icon, and let's rename that top drawer navigator. Let's copy this. So we'll need it in the restaurant screen, of course. Import that. We'll need it in the profile screen. And we'll need it in Explore screen. Let's save that. So now if we go back to the drawer navigator, we also have to change this navigation function. We have to say open drawer. You'll notice the TypeScript error here. In order to fix this, we'll just say drawer navigator navigation prop and pass root stack params here. Save this. And now we see that we have this method here, open drawer. Now let's go ahead and click on this, and we'll see that we have a drawer here. We can go to restaurants, profile, and explore. If we click on explore and go to restaurants, then go back, you'll see that we're back at the screen of explore, and we can see our navigation here. Same with restaurants. And our link to the restaurant screen here also works. So that's how simple it is. Let's see what error do we have here. Tab bar active. Yes, this should be drawer active tint color. Same with this one, drawer inactive tint color. We don't need the menu anymore, so we can just delete this. Delete all the imports. So now we have a clean TypeScript checked project here. Now let's say there was a login screen, some authentication functions that you have in the app. What you have to do is just go to the drawer navigation. Let's actually just switch it to tab navigation. Let's say app tab navigator. You see how easy it is to just switch between. So let's say we have a login screen. Login TSX, and we have a sign up. So now all we have to do here is say that if the user is logged in, then we display those screens. But if not, then we just display a stack of authentication. So that would be a login screen and a sign up screen. So we can say render content, make a function which will be inside of the app, and it will render content. Let's say is logged in equals false, and let's say if is logged in, then we return the screens that we had before. But otherwise, we'll return the off stack. Let's say root stack screen, name off stack, component will be off stack, which we don't have yet. Let's add off stack to the params here. And let's create the off stack. Return, let's say off stack navigator. Let's create a type for it. Let's create it first. Create native stack navigator. This will be a type of stack params, which will be login, define, and sign up. Also undefined. We don't have any params for them yet. And let's say off stack screen. Component will be login. Let's also name this login. And let's go to login screen and also say login screen. Same for sign up. Just for easier importing. say login screen. And sign up screen. Now we just have to use this in our component here. We also have to import React. Now what you'll notice that there is a tab navigation on the off screen. We just have to move this root navigation to the roof stack because we don't have it in the intro screens. Let's move this. And here we can just say render content instead. Now also what I noticed is that we don't need this screen defined here because it's not in the navigator. So we can just say off stack, off screen stack, save it. And now we have a login screen here. If we go to here and say is logged in to true, we see our app with normal navigation. If we say false, then we're back to the login screen. So whenever you would have any logic with authentication, it depends on what you're using. Is it Firebase? Is it async storage? So it depends on your use case. I usually do this with Firebase and Redux. For example, I would have a user object in Redux, and if it's not empty, then I know that the user is logged in after the Firebase authentication flow completes. And then in container, I would say something like const user equals use selector, and just say something like state apps state, and say state current user. And here I would just check if the current user exists, then I would output the stack of the app. Otherwise, I would just show the login screens. And whenever a user is logged in, I'm setting the current user to the user object. And this way I know that he is authenticated and I have to show the actual app stack. Now, of course, if we remove this and go to the login screen, you can again use navigation here. And here we can just say touchable highlight on press navigation, navigate. You can just say sign up. And let's just say profile icon here. Now if we click on this, you'll see that we are in the sign up screen because it's a stack with two screens. Now we cannot go, for example, to explore. You'll see an error here. We can't also go to the explore stack because it's not in this navigator. If we go back to the Tab Navigator, you'll see that we have the off-screen stack with only two screens. We have a navigator here, and here we have a root stack navigator with all of the other screens. But since we're logged out, we are just defining the off-stack screen. The app doesn't see this navigator here. So we can only navigate between those screens here. So that's why the sign up works and the explore doesn't. And in order to fix this error here, we can just say native stack navigation prop and say off stack params. Now we can see it's gone. We're using the off stack params that we've defined in the off screen. And now if we go back, it's type, because if we type in something, we'll get an error because this only can be login or sign up. So that's it for the tutorial, guys. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, just drop them in the comments. If you want more content like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.